presentations are really a liability for any new project.
Amazon quietly killed PowerPoint in its most important meetings. What they replaced it with could change the way you launch your next big idea.
Every product and every decision on Amazon is backed by a PR FAQ. I think the biggest mistake that people make is start from the solution.
Most teams jump straight to building and miss the one step that could save months of wasted work.
That made me realize this is not a project that I want to pursue.
Imagine bringing a brand new team member up to speed in 20 minutes flat.
Everything behind the PR FAQ is about answering the important questions before you start in a project.
Inside Amazon, it's non-negotiable. Outside Amazon, it might just be your competitive advantage.
Marcelo has worn every hat in tech: engineer, founder, CTO, and product visionary. And now he's here today to talk about the PR FAQ framework, the innovative method used at Amazon, and how it can revolutionize how you launch your next big idea. So welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Mike.
Yeah, I appreciate you taking the time to be here. So let's just jump right in. You led product and tech at Amazon. So how did writing the PR FAQ differ from traditional product planning, and what impact did it have on the culture of innovation there?
Yeah, Amazon invented PR FAQ, which stands for press release and frequently asked questions, 20 years ago as a product/business strategy tool. And every product and every decision on Amazon is backed by a PR FAQ. So it's very common framework used everywhere. And what it is not a substitute for other things like OKRs or PRDs or other artifacts. It's something that you do before you commit to a project. So it's like a decision too, right? Like, should we do this or should we not do this? And if we do this, what is the vision? Like what we are working backwards from? And what are the strategies, the boundaries that we're going to set for this project?
Okay. So how would you describe the framework to somebody who doesn't understand it, and like, why is starting from the end so powerful?
Yeah, a lot of people miss when they start a new project, they are like really eager to get going, right? To execute, particularly if you are like a highly driven person, highly motivated, like you just want to jump in and start doing it. And what the PRFAQ does is like forces you to take a moment and think, what outcome I'm trying to get here, right? And there are two outcomes really. You have to think about the outcome for your business, right? Like what you're trying to achieve. And there is the outcome for the customer. Once you have clarity on those two things, you can put that on paper and write it down to make sure that it's coherent, that you're like proposing something that makes sense, right? Because if you try to write something that doesn't make sense, it makes you feel uncomfortable. So writing is a powerful tool in that context. So the framework forces you to come up with this end game to begin with, right? And the end game is like usually the launch date, the announcement date, whatever that is, like, and then you write that as if it was today. It makes it easier for you to paint the picture of where you're trying to go.
Cool. So you had mentioned in your book that your first fake press release backfired, but now it's central to your methodology. So what changed?
Well, I learned how to do the Amazon way, right? So I spent 18 years working on many startups. I tried to use a format of this back in 2006, even before I knew what a PRFAQ was. Like it didn't really work because people didn't understand the context that I was giving. Now PRFAQ is a little bit more well known. Not a lot of people have used it yet, but a lot of people have heard about it. And when I went to Amazon and like got exposed to the real deal, like how they write a PRFAQ, how it manifests itself, how they use the PRFAQ, it took me a few weeks, but then I got it. Like I had this aha moment saying like, wow, this is a really valuable tool, particularly for founders and product leaders that are really trying to figure stuff out.
So what types of business problems are uniquely well suited for that approach?
There is really two categories of problems. One is like you're inventing something new, or you're changing something that already exists. And that applies to product, business, projects, programs, services, process, or policy within an organization. PRFAQ is a way to discuss vision and strategy, right? It's not a planning tool. So anything that requires some discussion around vision and strategy, PRFAQ is a fit for it, including things that are not tech, right? It could be, should I do a new podcast or not? Should I start my newsletter? Should I open this cupcake, store in the mall? Like, you can use the PRFAQ for all kinds of purposes.
So I know you've helped founders and large enterprises apply the method. Who struggles the most to adopt it?
It's really hard to adopt the PRFAQ because it's very different from what people have been doing before. So I compare that to the beginning of the OKR era. For me, the OKR era really started in 2015, 2016, when the first videos, first books started to come out, and like people really didn't know how to use it.
That's very interesting. So you've, after over 60 interviews, bunch of reviews, what's one myth that you've busted about how people innovate and communicate ideas?
I think there is a big difference between communicating ideas via a presentation, a slide deck, versus a document. And what people really haven't seen yet, and I hope they start to understand that, is that presentations are really a liability for any new project, for a strategy or any other thing that you're doing, because it's really hard to capture the essence of the strategy and the vision in a presentation, right? And when you write something, you have to write in a way that people can read it when you're not in the room and understand it. And for me, that's the sign of good clarity, right? Like, if you have to explain every single time what the project is for every new employee or every stakeholder that you meet, even after they read your presentation or your documents, you don't have enough clarity, right? So writing really helps with that clarity discovery.
So, but if someone is like adverse to writing, how do you encourage them to at least give this a shot?
I think the adversity to writing comes from people think they don't write well. And there is like two sides of this, right? One is the grammar, the English side of it. For that one, I say, like, don't worry about it. There are tools out there like Google Docs and Grammarly and everything else. Like, it's going to make your writing like proper. But the other one is the creative writing. Like, people get overly concerned about, like, can I write in a way that is exciting? And you don't have to. You're just writing in a way that is clear and concise. That's all that you're doing.
So you also talk about truth seeking as a key principle. What's the biggest lie that teams tell themselves during the product visioning process, and how does PRFAQ expose it?
I think the biggest mistake that people make is start from the solution, right? Like, they get excited about building something, but they don't understand, like, who's the customer, what problem they have, how they are solving the problem today, like, how is our solution better than existed. So the PRFAQ helps everyone take a pause and answer those questions, right? And in the process of answering those questions, something interesting happens. A lot of times you decide this is the wrong project. Or you decide, like, oh, there is a better opportunity here on this adjacent to what we were just discussing. So let's go pursue that. If you just jump in and start executing, you would miss that, right? You'd miss the opportunity to see it. And you only discover at the end, 3 months, 6 months, when you're launching whatever you're doing, that you realize customers didn't come, customers didn't care, customers didn't buy, no one used it. It's because, like, you missed some important discovery early on.
So can you share a story perhaps where a team discovered they were solving the wrong problem and PRFAQ helped them pivot?
I'll share a personal story.
Okay.
Early this year, I was approached by some investors for us to create a new program in Seattle for entrepreneurs. So, I started writing a PRFAQ. I was really excited about it, by the way. Like, I was like, I'm in, let's do this thing. But then I decided to write a PRFAQ. And in the process of writing a PRFAQ, I realized, wait a second, I need to know more about my customer. And my customer were startup founders. So I talked with 12 startup founders and asked them a few questions. That made me realize the problem we are solving is not the problem that they had. And it made me pause and say, like, this is not a project that I want to pursue because it's probably not going to be successful.
How does PRFAQ differ from traditional roadmaps or pitch decks? And I have to ask why you believe PowerPoint is the enemy of deep thinking.
Yeah, so PRFAQ is a vision and strategy document. So it doesn't include plans, doesn't include tactics, doesn't include roadmap or wireframes or branding, none of that, right? The reason it does not is because if you have any of those elements in a document, that's what people are going to talk about. They're going to absolutely ignore all the strategy and vision discussions, and they're going to focus on the what, right? Like, what exactly are we building? And they're going to talk about implementation and the details and the user flow, yada, yada. So you want to avoid those conversations first. Like, you want to have really clarity. So it's not really a roadmap tool. It's not like a product requirement document. It's not like a UX user story type of document, none of that. You can do that in parallel to a PRFAQ, but usually you do after, because you don't want to invest a lot of time, if you haven't decided yet if you're going to pursue that project or not. Now, the problem with PowerPoint is many, and I'm just quoting a few folks here, like Edward Stuft, who talk about PowerPoint being terrible at capturing complex ideas, right? Because it's all bullet points, it's disconnected slides. People have to fill in the gaps. You don't know what you don't know. You have the impression, like you imagine that you have something good when you create a PowerPoint, but it does not stand the test of, someone reading it and understanding.
That's actually that's a great idea, because I mean, in my personal opinion, is most meetings are a complete waste of time. And the reason that I feel like they're a complete waste of time is I feel like a good chunk of meetings is spent, to the point you made, catching people up who have missed previous meetings, or maybe they've just been added to the team, so they weren't in previous meetings. And another good percentage of time is catching people up on issues that involve the team that's meeting, but maybe they're not privy to. So it just
Yes.
seems like you got an hour-long meeting and you spend 40 minutes discussing all of that, and then you have 20 minutes to tackle the problem. So I think that's a great point. But do you see a place for this in sectors outside of tech? So maybe like education, healthcare, government.
Yeah, so the PRFAQ is one of the frameworks that Amazon uses, and I think it can be applied to any type of project. But Amazon has many other frameworks for all kinds of meetings, right? So PRFAQ is future looking. It's about vision and strategy of something that we want to build. We want to decide what we want to build. But Amazon has other frameworks to discuss about the state of the business, problems in the past, about recruiting and promotion, like lots of frameworks, and everything is the same style, right? Like you have 5, 10, 20 minutes of reading in the beginning of a meeting, and then the conversations. You mentioned something that I think it's very important, right? Every project has new employees. Like sometimes they are external, they join the organization. Sometimes they are from other teams that are going to get involved and they are just getting started, or they got transferred to your project. It's so hard for these people to pick up quickly, like the vision and the strategy. There is nothing for them to hang on to. Like they're going to read a bunch of slide decks and a bunch of documents and a bunch of user stories and try to come up with what's going on here, right? It's much easier to give them a PRFAQ and say, like, this is the vision and strategy of our project. And it takes them 20 minutes to be on board.
Yeah, it's interesting. As a consultant, I run into that a lot, where I've had people provide me task lists as their spec. And I'll ask them about it, and they say, well, this has already been discussed, but not with me.
Yes.
I have to ask these questions, or I'm not going to know what the heck any of this means. And
Yes.
they never seem to have any means for like nobody's kept notes about meetings. They never seem to have any means. So this, when I was reading through your book, I just kept coming back to that as a thought, that if more people were to use that, it would help with so many things, because especially in the tech world, you're right. Like people, if you're in a corporation, a certain team might not get involved until much further down the road, and a whole bunch of things have occurred before that, and they probably need to know about that. So I think this is really interesting. But like one of the key points that you've made is that people skip what you call the truth seeking phase. So what does that phase look like inside the PRFAQ method?
So the way the PRFAQ works is not only the document, right? Your objective is not just to create this document that is perfect and then you can hand it off to the team to execute. That's not at all what you do. So what you do is you have an owner who writes the document, right? The first version of the document. And then what they do is they set up these review sessions with folks, right? And the idea is for people to contribute to the document. It's not for people to point what's wrong with the document, but to make it better, right? To provide constructive feedback from the point of view. So if they are software engineers, they're going to look from that vision and strategy as a software engineer. If they are a UX designer, they're going to look from that. Marketing, sales, customer success, legal, like product management. Everyone look at the document from their angle and help figure out how can we make this initial idea into a better idea.
So how can smaller teams or maybe even solo founders realistically implement PRFAQ without it becoming just a complete time sink?
You have to right size the use of PRFAQ, right? Like you have to look at how big is this project? Is it a week project or is it a 6-month project, right? If it is a week project, probably PRFAQ is not a good tool for that use case, unless the risk is enormous, right? So you have to also identify how is the risk. If this is like, could disrupt your business completely, you probably want to spend a lot of time thinking about before you start executing, right? So the PRFAQ can be a good use case of that. PRFAQ is better if you have a team, 2 or more people involved, because you can find, not only collaborate, but you can find the truth better. But you can also use by yourself. Like as you write the PRFAQ, you're going to think very clearly about what you know, what you don't know, what you need to discover, what is assumption, what is fact, what are the gaps on your understanding of the problem, the solution, the go-to-market, the distribution, everything that you need to imagine.
So you lay out in the book different types of PRFAQs, from research to performance. How does a team know which type they need to write?
It depends on the stage of their business or their product, right? So what I say is there is 3 ways that people identify an opportunity. One is they have a solution. They have an idea for a product, but they don't know who's the customer or what problem they are solving for the customer. The other one is they identify a problem for a customer. They might not have a solution yet. They have a hypothesis for a solution. And although they know one customer, that solution might be applicable to more customers. So the job there is to identify who are all the customers who have this type of problem. And the third type is you have a customer, but you haven't identified a problem yet. Maybe you work a lot with veterinarians. Maybe you work a lot with therapists. Maybe you work a lot with retailers. And like you want to find new problems that they have. Maybe you already have a business that's selling to them and you're trying to identify. So in this case, you have the customer, but you don't have the problem and you have the solution. So regardless of how you start, you have to have all 3. And what I say in the book is that the hypothesis or the assumptions you're going to be make shift depending on where you're starting, right? So sometimes you have a product, but you don't have a customer and a problem. So you know the product works, but you have a hypothesis about a problem and a hypothesis about a customer. So you have to go figure that out. So that's how there are different types of PRFAQs. They vary by what you know, basically.
So as you've observed teams trying to implement PRFAQ, what are some mistakes they make that derail the process?
We mentioned about it, like sometimes they try to put too much in the PRFAQ, right? The document is really 6 pages. It's 1 page for the press release and 5 pages of FAQs. And they try to put the roadmap and the feature list and the wireframes and a lot of implementation detail, technology, the cloud provider, the APIs that we're going to use. That's a mistake, right? Like you're already committed if you're doing something like that. Pull back, focus on strategy and vision. If your customer doesn't care about something, probably is not as important to include in a PRFAQ, unless it's a piece of information that is critical for the execution, right? So if it is not critical, you can say like, we'll decide later. Your cloud provider is not critical. Like you can decide that later, right? So don't include that in the PRFAQ. However, if you need a data set that is critical, maybe you're doing a business on real estate and like acquiring a data set about real estate is critical for this project, you're going to have to talk about it.
So, for leaders out there listening, trying to create a writing culture like Amazon's, where should they start, especially if their team is already used to using PowerPoints and quick stand-ups?
Yeah, I'm actually I'm preparing an article about this because I get that question so often. And I really think that, the approach of like, let's have a top-down mandate that we are a writing organization now, we're gonna like abandon, like it's really impractical. It's very hard to do that. What I recommend people is like pick one project that is small, that is manageable, and like try to apply the writing practices to that project. So you particularly try to get with people that are eager to try something new, right? And like maybe it's a project that has 5 people, like ask them to write a PRFAQ, ask them to start writing more things, and like learning and adjusting. The first time probably is not going to be super successful. Like give it a chance to do it a second and a third time. And once that team starts to really adopt that culture, then let it disseminate through the organization, through adjacent teams, and other parts of the organization that are eager to adopt that as well.
So, I want you to think of yourself as when you were 10 years old. If your 10-year-old self wrote a PR FAQ about your dream job, what would the headline say?
Ooh, it was probably something to do with video games. When I was 10, 11, I really, it was the early days of the PC, and I really was fascinated by video games and software. So I tried writing, a few video games when I was very young, like 13, 14, and like it was total failure because I didn't know how to code, but it was really excited. So it would be about, a new type of game.
Nice, nice. I like that. So, if one of our listeners has a bold idea, but they don't know where to start, what's the very first step they should take using the PRFAQ framework to turn that into something real?
Well, what I would recommend is first read a few PR FAQs. Go to my website, the book's website, not my website. The book's website has a bunch of like examples that you can download and read to get a feel for what it is. And I also have content there to help people get started, explain what it is. I have templates that people can download. And of course, they can buy the book. But I think fundamentally, everything behind the PRFAQ is about answering the important questions before you start in a project. Who's the customer? What problem you're trying to solve? What is the solution? And how your customer is going to find that solution? These are like really important questions. If you don't have clarity on that, I would say pause. Do not start executing on that, right? It's that like build and they will come. It's not a good strategy, right? So think about like how our customers are going to find whatever you're doing. It's a podcast, it's a product, a service. Like what marketing levers do you have? What distribution levers do you have? What partnerships you're going to make? And then talk about the solution. How is the solution different than what customers are already using? Do customers really believe in that solution or not? They are just creating a hypothesis about it. And on the problem side of the house, I would say really, really talk to your customers and understand if it is a real problem or not. Is the problem growing or shrinking? Is it urgent or not urgent? Is severe or not severe? Sometimes customers have problems and they're like, yeah, but I don't care about that problem. Yes, I have the problem, but I don't care. Right? Not enough to go find a solution for it. So really try to understand that.
That's awesome. Well, this has been really interesting to delve into. Could you let the listeners know where they can go to connect with you?
Yeah, the easiest place to go is go to Google, search for PRFAQ book. And the book website, which is www.theprfaq.com, is going to be the first result. From there, you can find all the resources, articles, where to buy the book, and everything else. And my contact information is there as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for giving us a peek behind the curtain of one of Amazon's most powerful tools and for turning it into something the rest of us can actually use. It's been an awesome dive into this. I really have appreciated it. So thanks so much for that.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Well, if this conversation got your wheels turning, head over to theprfaq.com and grab a copy of the PRFAQ framework. Whether you're building your first product or your 50th, Marcelo's approach will change how you think about innovation. And don't forget, we have new episodes of Gaining the Technology Leadership Edge. They drop every Wednesday at 8 a.m. Pacific. Be sure to subscribe, hit the like button, and leave us a comment. And if you've got a leadership question, submit it to us at the link that's in the description, and we might just tackle it in a future episode. Hope to see you back here again next week.